That what we do is kind of monotonous, that it's sometimes can feel like we're just changing diapers, we're just taking care of kids, we're just dealing with, can I go to the bathroom 20 times? We're just dealing with kids who are rowdy and don't want to sit still. But we're building tiny disciples. And yesterday when new pastor Jim was talking, he must have mentioned disciple making 100 times. And that's his passion, that's his vision for our church. And as I was thinking about what does that mean for preschool, our kind of mission statement is, and what my team kind of worked on, and what I feel like our base purpose is that we provide a safe, fun place where kids know that I'm safe here, I can have fun here until mom and dad come back. And until that happens, they're not really going to get what we have to say. But once they learn from us that church is a safe place, it's a fun place, and I'm going to be okay away from mom and dad, then we can start to instill those biblical truths in them and the stories in the Bible that are going to last them throughout their lives, and then they'll be able to build on those truths and hopefully follow Jesus someday. So I hope tonight was an encouragement to you guys that no matter what you're doing, as monotonous or sometimes gross as it may be, that we're building the kingdom in that, whether feeding goldfish. I mean, who knew that goldfish could be kingdom work, but it sure is. So I just want to encourage you with that when you are tired and tempted to not come, and which I love I'm in a plane crash and I have to tell my preschool worker I'm not going to be there. I think that was awesome because I've heard some stories that I'm going to remember that now. Like, well, one time I heard a lady was in a plane crash and she still called and gave her lady notice. But I want to thank you for serving. You're not even the whole of what preschool ministry is. There are even more people that serve in other ministries that are in other parts of the church. But we absolutely couldn't do ministry without each one of you. So don't ever think there's 150 of us, so if I'm not there or if I quit or if I'm missing, it doesn't matter, because it absolutely matters. And our kids do need kind of more attention than maybe some of the other kids, but every one of you is important, so I appreciate you being here. So what we're going to do tonight, hopefully till 7:30, is I feel like that reviewing the basics is good because we have quite a few new people, but often people who have been here forever sometimes forget the basics. So I don't do this to bore you. I don't do this to imply that you're not doing things right, but we're going to go over our handbook just to remind everybody, old and veterans alike, what our expectations are, what we should be doing while we have kids in care. If you got a green sheet when you came in tonight, that means I need something from you. The first box is it's time to redo your background check, and I've sent you an email to do that, and you haven't responded yet. The second blank is the online child safety training, which you should have received an email, and you have 2 weeks from when I sent that to complete it. But the third one, our minor safety policy that the family team came up with, I'm going to go ahead and do a condensed version of that tonight if that box is checked. So because a lot of that was already in our handbook anyway. And I want to say that preschool is the only one that has a handbook, and y'all are abiding by it, so that's awesome. So if your third blank is checked, I have some of these that you can read later, but we're going to go over this really quickly as I mention different safety things in our handbook, and that's going to fulfill your minor safety policy training. So if you have questions after, you can let me know. I'll give you one of these, and if you feel confident that you agree to and believe what's in here, then I'll give you the signature page, and then we'll have that on file for you, and you're good forever. So any questions about all the trainings and all the things that I mentioned earlier? Okay, then we're going to get in groups by room, and I have different leaders in each room, and I'm going to meet with the Train in Western room folks, and we're going to get there, and I just have questions for them like what do you need help with? What could I do to make your service better? Do you have any suggestions? And then a schedule, because one of the things that people told me a while back that would be helpful for y'all is classroom management. And I know we can't control who comes on Sundays. We can't control what family they come from, what happened the night before, how late they stayed up, what they had for breakfast. We can't control what we get, but we can control what we do with them. So one way that I feel like would help our classes run better is if they had consistency of schedule, because that's something that we can fix kind of immediately. So in your classes, probably starting with travel, fire truck, I would like y'all to talk about when you break up, what is a schedule that works for any one of you, and see if we can kind of get on the same schedule so that all the 9:30s kind of look alike and all the 11 o'clocks in that class look alike, so that no matter what week they come, they're used to the same thing, even if there are different people in there. And then with the older two classes, I'm going to talk about lesson stuff. But that's what we're going to do after we talk all together in here. One other thing I would like to ask you to do when you leave here, one other point of consistency that we can have is teachers more regularly. So unless I feel led, I'm not going to ask you personally, but I'd just like you to pray about teaching more often, teaching every week, making this your ministry, your Bible study. We don't have that many teachers who do that, and I realize that the kids aren't regular, so having the same teachers every week is not imperative, but I do think it's important, and I think the most consistency we can have is the best. And when you walk in, when a kid walks in and you know their name, sometimes that gets them to stand up a little straighter. Sometimes it makes them feel a little more loved. So anyway, that's just kind of a side note. I'd ask you all to pray about if God leads you to teach more often. So the first thing I want to ask before we get into here's what you need to do is think about what is going right in our preschool ministry. If anybody wants to share kind of a shout out about somebody that you serve with, or something you saw, something your kid came home and said about their teacher, just what's going right in our ministry that you see. Thank you. You're welcome. My assistant, Melissa, does a lot of the organization and prep. Every week, we get together and we look at the lessons, and we say, like, is this actually going to work in a class of 20 kids? If not, we come up with something that we think is better. If so, then we provide everything for you. We want to make it as user-friendly as possible for you guys. So you're welcome. What do you think? That's awesome. Yeah, communication between classes. And what does that require? Communication between the first hour and second hour. Second hour being on time. So 11 o'clock, folks, we won't make you raise your hands, but you will be a great help to the 9:30 teachers in all the classes if you get there in plenty of time for them to share what's going on with the kids that morning, allergies, attitudes, whatever, and then still allow them a time to go to the bathroom, get coffee, and get service on time. So thank you. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good. In Train and Western, we're going to continue to do those buckets. Travel and fire truck, that's one of your questions y'all can talk about is, do you still want to do that, to do those activities? So while I believe that teaching can happen in every age group, we don't provide lessons for the two youngest classes, but we do for the others. So anybody else? Yes. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids, yes. Yes, and I love it. And I feel bad when I say I have 150 volunteers on my list and I still need more. But when I first met Jason tonight, he said, are you completely staffed? And I said, never. Maybe for like 5 minutes, but as soon as I say it out loud, somebody quits or gets sick or leaves or moves up. So we do have a great volunteer group, and I love that. But yes, always more. But yes, we're very blessed. And the other pastors don't necessarily need as many as I do, but they're like, man, you get all the people. So I appreciate each one of you. Yes. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. And you're welcome. And our safety policy prompted that. We thought about that years ago, and we ended up doing the half doors so that. Does anybody remember the 2 words from our, if you've come to the minor safety policy training, that you should always be? Look at y'all. Observable and interruptible. That's right. And those doors do help that. Who said that? Ruth? I love that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Good. And he just finished Western Room. So Western Room guys, good job, because that's your good. Anybody else before we move on? Awesome. Real quick, promotion Sunday is this coming Sunday, the 20th. So the kids that you, unless you're in babies or crawlers, the kids that you have the next time you serve will be a whole year younger than who you had the last couple of weeks. So just keep that in mind as you think about pottying and how they speak and what they can do and your expectations. So just remember that you have a whole year younger worth of kids coming up. I always say, and those of you that have been around with me for a long time, we're not the most important ministry of the church. Does anybody know what I say? We're the first most important ministry of the church, because what happens in the first few minutes of somebody dropping off their kids determines how they feel about the rest of their time in church. So I'm not going to read this to you. There's not a little lip on this thing, so it's not very helpful. So I'm not going to read this to you, but if you'll just go through the handbook with me real quick. We have a lot of students in here, and some that are not here tonight, but I want to, since we do have so many students, especially the student helper part, I want to make sure that you know what the expectations are of them. But just volunteers, it's important to me that you actively attend church outside of your day to serve. I know some days that you serve, you aren't able to stay for the other hour to go to service or Sunday school, but it's really important for me that you are not just a part of Northside Baptist Church as a preschool volunteer once a month, that you also are involved in worship and in Bible study on Sundays or Friday mornings or whatever that looks like. So that's important to me. Scheduling, I try to get you the same week every month just for ease of scheduling. It's never an issue to change, but as soon as you know if you might not be there, let me know so that we can make sure we have somebody there with the kids. And also, I don't think there's not. Everybody in this room always gets a name tag when you come in. There are a couple that always walk by there, but y'all are good. Always make sure you get a name tag. If you're serving with somebody who doesn't have a name tag, please remind them to come get a name tag. If you're not wearing your shirt, which if you don't have one, let me know next time you see me and I'll get you one. You don't have to do that, but everybody needs a name tag every time. And it's also good, I know your names, but when I bring a new person, I can say, Mom and Dad, this is Miss Jill. And the mom can immediately make a connection, even if they don't know Jill. They remember that there's a sweet lady named Miss Jill who has their baby for the next whatever. So always make sure you have a name tag. Again, beginning, first service people, I always say whoever arrives first is in charge. If it's the kids, you're in trouble. So please be first. So first service, make sure you get there early. And with so many new people coming in, they get here early and earlier because they don't know where to go or what to do. Today, I think we had 7 different visitor families. So first hour service, get there as close to 9 as you can. Second service people, 10:40, 10:45. So those first service people have a chance to talk with you and get where they need to go. Sorry. Yes. And it is hard when Bible studies let out earlier than the service. And so one thing you can do with that is make sure that you have an intentionally planned something going on away from the door so that kids aren't just playing haphazardly while parents come, because then everybody stops and looks at the door, and if it's not their parent, then they get upset. So kind of have something planned in the back of the room so that they're still engaged whenever parents come. You can read the student helpers section on your own. Just to be clear, so when we had our first minor safety policy meeting, there was a whole thing on changing it to where men can change diapers. I've since changed that back. Still only women, still only adult women are changing diapers. If men need to go help with the boys in the bathroom, they can stand outside the door and kind of monitor, but still adult women changing diapers. So if there's a 13, 14-year-old student, make sure that they're not doing the diapering in bathrooms. So just remember that that's in there. Make sure the students don't take kids out of the room. Make sure the students, unless you ask them to go get something, don't leave the room, because we've had little kids follow students out of the room when they didn't even know, hey, there's a bathroom door, there's a back door here, I'm gonna follow and see where it goes. So just look over that and make sure you're aware of what they can do and should do and be expected to do so you can help out with that. Before kids arrive, we have our school meets in here, we have MOPS, we have Bible studies several nights a week. We have many groups of people that may have been in the room since the last time you were in there. So part of, especially first service people, part of getting there early is looking at the room, making sure it's safe, making sure there aren't things that are broken, things like that. So before kids arrive, there are certain things you need to do. Make sure the bucket has everything you need in it. If there's something that you want to get from the supply room, if you need to get extra cups, snacks, all that should be done before kids arrive. So make sure that you're ready to receive those kids, because if there is an anxious kid, or more often than not these days, an anxious parent, you don't want to be like, oh, I'll be right back, I just need to run and get this. You want to be prepared and ready to receive their kids. Make sure things are labeled. We have so many kids, and we just want to make sure that things are labeled correctly. Allergies these days, make sure you ask everybody that you don't know, especially at the beginning as the classes change and you don't know the kids. We do have a couple of allergies, so make sure you're checking with people. What to do during class? Two big things that I think are equally as important. One is love the kids. If you don't, I hate to say this out loud for me and Melissa's sake, if you don't get anything done in the bucket but you loved the kids that day, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it just happens. Getting the Bible story across is awesome. If you get the activities done, great, but just love the kids. Because again, I feel like that's our primary purpose. That's what we start with. They know that we love them, and then we can teach them. And then also supervise. Have a system. Make sure you're counting kids. Make sure you know before you go outside, before you come back in, who you have. Supervision is super, super important. So make sure that you know who you have, you're loving them, and you know how many you have. This is not rocket science. Does anybody have any questions or suggestions or comments about kind of the what to do and what not to do? When class ends, I know it's hard when you are ready to get out the door, maybe sermon ran late, you have somewhere to get. If you can make sure that your room is left clean, any extra crafts or extra supplies are taken out of the cubbies, taken off the cabinets, everything goes back to the supply room. If you can just make sure that your room is clean, ready for the next group to come in whenever that may be, that would really be helpful, just because we don't have people that come in between and clean the room. So if you can help make sure that that's done and there's cleaning procedures. Okay, safety and security. Again, always know how many kids you have. Because we don't have the same kids every week, it's just important to always know who you have that day and count them for that day. We don't have fire drills for during church, but there's a fire safety plan, if you don't know this, in each room by the door. Just make sure you kind of have that in mind. We do have a security guard that stays by the preschool area the whole time, but just kind of have an idea in your head. If you shut the doors, they should all be locked from the outside. That's the main reason we have that. Even though the kids can open them from the inside, which is really annoying, I'd rather y'all deal with that than dealing with someone unwanted coming in the room. So the doors can lock. If you latch the top doors, they can lock and people can't come in your room. So just make sure you have kind of an idea of what to do in emergency situations. So new playground thing that's happening. The upslide broke because of little boots and all the little feet on it. So I've ordered a new one, but it's no longer going to be an upslide because I can't spend $2,000 every couple of years. So we have climbing wall. We have other things they can climb on the ladder, but no more upslide. So I think it's a great idea. don't have a slide that they can do that on, so no more upslide. Health and wellness, just make sure that you are making sure kids have clean faces when they leave. You're checking diapers, changing diapers. We know you can change a diaper and then 3 seconds later they can be wet again right as mom walks up. But just make sure, I always say that a clean face and a dry diaper equals care in the eyes of a parent. So just make sure that you're attentive to that kind of thing. Don't come if you're sick. If you see kids that are sick, make sure that I know that. And behavior. Is my water over there in that bucket? Okay. What I think about discipline in the classroom is do what you can in the class to redirect the child. Make sure that you are using appropriate touch. We're not going to spank anybody. We're not going to yank their arms away. But, oh, thank you. If a child becomes disruptive to the whole class, please bring them up so that, kind of remove them from the class so that I can take care of it and you can continue to do what you're doing. I don't want y'all to feel like you have to deal with a class-wide disruption. So redirecting kids, I always say to remember that sometimes you need to put a toy in timeout or crayons in timeout instead of the kid. So I don't want that to be a big issue for you guys. So if it becomes more of an issue than you feel like you can handle or a whole classroom disruption, let me know. Separate the kids. We're not going to yell at the kids. We're not going to say you can't have snack because you weren't listening. Things like that. So just read over basic things that I'm sure you know to do and not do. We're not going to spank anybody. We're not going to yell at them. We're not going to humiliate them. When the parents come to the door, we're not going to say, your child was crazy today. We don't know what that mom and dad have been going through. They need positive just as much as the kids need positive. Again, we can't control what they come in with. We can control how we love them while they're there. Same with the parents. And we have had parents who, because of teachers' behavior toward the parent, regardless of what happened with the kid, the parent doesn't want to come back because they didn't feel loved and welcomed. So there's something in there on biting. Let me know if somebody is biting. I'll talk about curriculum and storytelling and stuff with the older classes. But just remember that even if you're with the babies and crawlers, you can still sing to them. You can, with the little ones, every time at school when I walk up, it's just natural that you have a blue car, you have a green shirt. God made look at that flower. God made the flower. Look at you using your hands to color. You can always bring God into every situation without having a sit down, let's all sit crisscross applesauce on the rug and have a story. So just remember that you can always bring God and bring teaching into your classroom no matter what age you have, whether or not we provide a bucket of supplies for you. Okay, the back has appropriate and inappropriate touch, and I'm just going to real quick go over that based on our minor safety policies. This green book, which like I said, if the bottom thing on your little green sheet is marked, then special listening close to this. We have a procedure if you suspect abuse or if you witness abuse. We have a procedure of what to do for that, for filing reports, things like that. This policy describes our procedures for getting new volunteers and the background checks and the child safety training and things like that that we require. And then trainings. I don't do training well, and so I try to get everything I can this one time a year, because I know y'all don't want to come once a month or 3 or 4 times a year to listen to this. But I just want to make sure that we all are in the same page. So if you can make sure that you are following the handbook, that you know what it says, and if you have questions, let me know. 2-adult rule, we always have 2 adults in the room. With the numbers that we have, that's never an issue, except when I have 5 people scheduled and 4 of them cancel for some reason at the last minute. So this earlier you can tell me that you aren't able to be there, and Instead of saying, I can't be there this time, if you can say, I can't this time, but I can be here another time because I don't really have a lot of substitutes except just a couple of people. So trading, sometimes people are like, I'm out of town every week in July. Well, that's crazy, but okay. But generally, if you can trade your week, that's great. Because if you say I can't be here Sunday, my next question is always going to be, what Sunday can you be here? Just so we can keep the correct ratios and make sure our kids are safe. The half doors are really good with that. We no longer have people in the bathrooms inside the rooms alone. If you are in the hallway bathrooms between the train and western rooms, just make sure you keep the door open where you're observable and interruptible at all times. We have check-in and check-out procedures for safety purposes. Again, I'm always happy to be the bad guy. Even if a parent gets really mad at you for not releasing their kid if they don't have their sticker, you can bring the kid with the parent up to me, or you can bring the parent up to me, however you want, so that we can verify they're the right person. I always am happy to be the bad guy for that, so we can make sure that we're safe in that regard. If we ever have a missing child, just contact me. We'll contact security and get the campus locked down or eyes all around to find that child. There's a health policy, which is the same as what's in our handbook. If you're sick, don't come. If you see a child sick, we'll kind of separate them and then make decisions about that. Discipline is the same kind of thing in our handbook. The restroom and diaper changing policies, adult women only to do that. Accidental injuries. One thing that is in here that I want to make sure that everybody knows is if there is a head injury of any kind, even if they just fall and hit their head on the chair or kids bump heads, we're going to call parents immediately for that, even if it doesn't seem like it's a big deal or if there's not a bump or something, just because head injuries can manifest later in different things. So if your child does ever hit their head in class, make sure you let me know immediately instead of just letting it go if there's no mark. So that's one change to our policy. We don't text our kids. The only thing that kind of made this affect preschool electronic communication is if you have a student if your personal child is a student that's working with me, we decided it's okay for me to text them saying, can you serve this Sunday? There's not going to be any deep conversations. That's not appropriate, but just a text for the purpose of ministry. Can you be here? Whatever, class starts at whatever. That's okay. So that's the only time that I would be texting students. Contact. This policy is basically what our appropriate touch policy in our handbook is. High fives, pats on the back, we can hold hands, side hugs. I know that sometimes our kids run and jump in our laps. I decided that it's okay for preschoolers to sit in our laps because sometimes they do. Kindergarten and up, that is no longer allowable. Just that's where kind of we decided our policy was, because I know our kids do that, and I think that can be appropriate. Again, you're not alone. We don't do piggyback rides, we don't do wrestling, tickling, kissing, things like that. We're not going to do with the kids. Kids want to love on us. They want us to love on them. So just make sure it's an appropriate way, always around other people. And verbal contact, we're not going to tell inappropriate jokes, cursing, belittling, harsh language, name calling, things like that. We're not doing that with the kids. And then sometimes there's mistreatment of one minor by another minor with preschoolers because they hit each other and all that, but that's not exactly the same policy. So that's the minor safety policy in a nutshell, which, again, if you follow the preschool handbook, you're going to be following that as well. So if your last little box was checked on that, then you just completed that training and come and get a book and a signature page from at the end. So any questions about all the things? Again, it's not hard. It's just good reminders. We all need to be on the same page, following the same rules, making sure everybody's safe. Everybody has the same expectation. Because you do rotate, there's not always a lead teacher. You're not always going to be the lead teacher, always going to be the helper teacher. So everybody needs to be prepared to be in charge in case you're you're it that day for a little bit. So any questions before we break up? The breakouts are not going to be, not going to take forever. I just want to meet with y'all individually. Any other questions?